Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we're basking in our first victory under Ange, and the revolution has certainly begun. And we have today almost a full house, and we've got Stu back. How are you, mate?
All good. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too. We've got Si. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Loving Big Ange instead.
Excuse the voice. We were at the stadium last night.
Yeah, it was a bit lively yesterday, so struggling a bit, but I'm here.
We're here. And we have Deej. It's early morning from in Texas, but how are you?
Doing good.
Good.
Ange will keep me awake at all hours of the day.
That was special, wasn't it? It hasn't felt that good in probably, I'd say, 4 or 5 years, in my opinion. But where do we start? Do we go? I almost want to begin with that, with the whole atmosphere at the start of the game. I think it's good to get perspective from in the ground where we were, Si, but also watching it on TV, Stu and Deej. Did they make much of a thing of displaying the tifo that they did, the trumpet, the drums? Was that noticeable on TV?
I heard it. I don't know about the US one, but the one that I was listening to, you could hear it loud and clear. It was great.
Yeah. The service that I used to watch it kind of like cut into the game like as the game started, so I didn't get to see much of like the pregame stuff. But like you could hear you could definitely hear the drum, the trumpet maybe not as much, but but obviously like also the ground just sounded incredible the entire game.
Yeah, honestly, I've been a season ticket holder for about 12 years, and even the old White Hart Lane, it was like a North London derby at the old ground. But because of that trumpet which they added, which was such a good idea. You know, everyone sings at the start, and then the whistle goes, and everyone sits down, and there's silence. The trumpet just goes off, and everyone just starts singing again. It was just magical. That was absolutely special. Si, you were in the heart of it in the South Stand, weren't you?
Well, I was at East Upper, mate. So I was a little bit worried that
East Upper.
I was a little bit worried that we might not get as much atmosphere up there. But I'm right at the South Stand end of the East Upper, and we were singing most of the game up there as well. Once the South Stand was rocking, and it came round quite nice. But I tell you what, even go back to before the game. So I ended up in the Bricklayers, got in the Bricklayers at 3, so 2.5 hours before kickoff, rammed, couldn't move. You really couldn't move in there. The garden was and it was singing, and there was just almost like a carnival atmosphere. There was smiles, there was singing, everybody was drinking. So Johnny and I then thought, well, I'm not queuing up for another half hour to get a beer. So we came into the ground and we went down to the Shelfside bar, and that was rocking for an hour and a half before the game as well. It was just so much atmosphere there. There was some new songs going on. There was lots of laughing and joking. And then when the game went off, it was, I agree, the trumpet was a brilliant idea. I guess they're going to do that at the start of every home game, right?
Yeah.
Because it got the when the Spurs go marching in, going around the ground. And mate, when that went, there were 2 or 3 songs that really took off. You had a couple of when the Spurs, and then you had towards the end, Tottenham Till I Die, and that the whole ground was singing Tottenham Till I Die. It was deafening. It was I haven't, like you, Jim. I've been going for a long time. I can't really remember a game where the atmosphere was like that for that long.
And the weird thing was, it's like not just the atmosphere was amazing, but the whole game just seemed to meet the lofty expectations we had. And we'll dive into it in a minute, because I think there were still some areas we could improve on, and maybe another day the score would have gone differently. But it just felt like it was going to go our way that day. And as we said earlier, it was like this: we've been in this pressure chamber of Conte, Nuno, and Jose, of just negative, turgid football. And it's like someone took the lid off and the pressure just escaped amongst the fan base, and we just soaked it up, and we were all united. There was protests before the game as well, right? There was the ticket price rises, and when I saw those, there was probably about 150 people cheering. And to be fair to the Enoch Out protests, if any of the lists, they kind of kept within their lane on that and didn't try to kind of make it their thing. But there was lots of chanting about the prices. But then as soon as that whistle went, it was like we're all united for 2 hours. And I think that's the best way of being as a supporter group. We do our protests before and after together, but yeah.
And I think you've got to give them the credit for that, the supporters trust, because they promised faithfully that they'd do their protest outside, they'd make themselves heard, but they wouldn't bring it into the ground and bring the negativity in. And they didn't. You didn't hear any of it in the ground. It was all positive when we were in the ground.
Exactly, and there's been two individuals who have kind of caused a bit more of a divide accidentally, haven't they? One person was kind of tarnished the whole Levy Out crew as misogynist because of one comment, but that doesn't represent the whole group of people.
No.
I think it's fair to say, and on the flip side, them being called hooligans is probably very, very harsh. I mean, I've never felt threatened walking past their protests towards games, but let's not dive into that. We don't really want to get into all that stuff. But the match itself. Lineup was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it?
Yep.
Did anyone have money on Royale being dropped for that game
Nope.
after his performance last week?
No, not even close. And to be honest, I think that was probably what helped everyone because it just set the mark of what Ange is trying to do. He's not sitting back and defensive. It's like balls deep. I'm going in. I don't care. I'm not going to change my tactics, my philosophy for anybody. And I just absolutely love that man and his attitude to the game.
Did you notice that much of a tactical difference with Porro in there over Royale? Did you notice a conscious change in the way the team played?
I'll leave that to DJ to analyze. But I did a bit.
Go on,
Yeah,
DJ,
I mean, it was. I do think it was slightly different in that. I mean, obviously, the places where Porro excels versus the places where Emerson excels are different, and there were slight tweaks to the way that we played to maximize what Porro does well, which is kind of insane for a coach to do, based on what I've watched for the past couple of years at this club. But I think we all saw from the first 15, 20 minutes that Porro was kind of struggling a bit in the build-up. Like his first touch let him down a couple of times, and that led to, I think, a couple of United's best chances in the game.
Yeah.
Whereas we had Sarr, who is better in that area, kind of going wide where the traditional wingback would be because of the whole inverting the fullbacks thing that Ange does. So I think that we did see a lot more build-up focused down the left, which was good, I think, especially because what a player Udogie is. Just absolutely incredible that we got him for the price that we did. But I think that in the second half, Porro kind of I don't want to say he occupied the space that a traditional fullback did because he still was getting higher up the pitch and was still a bit more central, but he wasn't inverting to the level that Udogie was, where Udogie was like literally on the other side of the field for a non-decent chunk of the time. I think the other thing that we did that really helped us was that bringing Madison back deeper because they had Casemiro man marking him, and then as soon as that happened, because Bissouma and Madison were just able to run by the entire Manchester United midfield like they weren't even there, and that just helped to just completely take them out of the game.
Yeah, and the other surprising lineup was obviously Sark. Well, I guess we discussed this before, and I think HG from the Cheese Room was saying this, wasn't he? That like that's what he wanted to see but wasn't expecting to see was Sarr to come in for Skip, and we all got what we kind of wanted to see. Even though we love Skippy, he's a boyhood Spurs fan playing in the team. Sarr just feels like a bit more of he seems like a player with a higher ceiling. And it just would be a shame to not put him in now because he sat on the bench so much last year. You feel like you've got to give him the moment now before it's too late. But did you guys notice a big change of him in versus Skip? Do you think that's the one we're going to stick with?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I liked about Ange's comments on it afterwards as well was he said that he made those changes because he needs to see how they behave in a real life match situation. He said, otherwise I don't learn anything. I can see them in training, I can see what they do in training, but unless they're in a real life situation under pressure, he said, I need to understand how they're going to react and behave in those scenarios. With Sarr, I think Sarr is such a silky smooth player. He just glides past players. He just and that late run into the box, that's almost Dele Alli-esque, isn't it? That's not Skip's game. And I think you've got to talk about all three of those midfielders as a unit because I think they just ran the show in the second half.
They did.
United couldn't get near us in the second half. Mount and Fernandes, whether they'll ever be able to work together properly, I guess they will as they get used to each other. But they were so disjointed. And to Deege's point, when Maddison dropped a bit deeper, the gap between Casemiro and those two as well was evident. There was so much room for the three of them to operate in the middle of the park there.
There was.
Maddison was immense as well. Some of the balls that he was spraying about and the turns, and it was almost a mixture between sort of Dembele, Hoddle, and Gascoigne some of the time. It was just immense. And the ball he played out to Perisic for the second goal was just lovely.
Sublime.
If we get Bentancur back to the level he was, Bentancur, Maddison, and Basuma, who can all beat a man and carry the ball in a kind of way that Dembele used to, we're going to have no issues against teams playing a low block at all. Breaking down that midfield, I don't think it's going to be. The bad news is we did see Maddison leaving on crutches, but we can discuss that a bit later. It sounds like it was proportional,
apparently, right? That's what I've read.
Yeah, but I imagine he might end up being on the bench next game and coming on if they're a bit nervous. But
even if he does, I mean, that's kind of like what Andrew's referring to, that he's going to basically be giving everyone a run out at some point or another. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is where GLC gets his opportunity to have a run.
And that's not a bad backup to have either. But just sticking to the midfielders, just for the central midfielders a bit longer. Like you couldn't, if you were to watch that game as an independent fan who doesn't know about football, and you said, look, one of those defensive midfielders came from Real Madrid for £70 million and has won everything. The other one came from Brighton. Which one's which? I think most of them would think Basuma was the one from Real Madrid, wouldn't they? He was absolutely schooling Casemiro in that midfield today. That nutmeg he did with the back flick was absolutely outrageous in the box. He's just such a confident player. It's just, what did Conte do to him to get such bad performances out of him? It's just...
Well, didn't play him, did he?
Well, he didn't play him. Yeah. And he did have some injuries, to be fair to Conte. Basuma did carry a number of knocks. But I kind of feel the negativity around the club at that point. I didn't feel players were rushing to get themselves back in the team when they had issues. So.
In the case of Basuma, Conte actually came out, which again, coming out and say something like that just kind of underlines the man that he is. But he came out and said Basuma wasn't tactically clever enough and up to speed yet to play. And when I watch this bloke who's had 2 man of the match performances in a row, I'm thinking, what on earth are you talking about?
Yeah,
I think it means his tactics are dog shit.
Yeah,
pretty much. It means Basuma's probably looking at Conte's tactics thinking, what on earth are you doing? Even I can see that there's some easy improvements you could make if you just let me do what I do. And Conte's saying, no, you stay in that little 5-meter circle and you don't run with the ball. It was just... but anyway, that's the past, and now is the present, and things are looking... Well, anyone else? Oh, God, we've missed out where we should have started, really. Vicario, guys. I was so nervous after that first game that he looked a bit shaky. There were some moments where I thought, this guy's going to come out and clatter someone and get a red card sooner or later.
Yeah.
But he looks so self-assured today. Do you think he was a contender for one of the best players?
Yeah, I think there was a few of them on the pitch, to be honest, Jim. I think his shot stopping was great. I mean, there was a couple of close headers that he tipped over the bar, right? But he also came out and commanded his area a lot better than what he did against Brentford as well. So, yeah, I think we got another good sign in there.
Yeah, sorry, I think I was going to say, I think he could have been competing for man of the match if United could fucking stay onside. Excuse my French. Some of those saves on the offside goals specifically, and obviously the Casemiro header, if you aren't listening to Manchester United pundits, were just beautiful.
Yeah. So there's all this is going on as well, isn't there? So apparently at half-time, Roy Keane's saying, Spurs are here for the taking, it's just a matter of time, and kind of mugging us
Arrogant
off.
For playing like Man City.
That's the general vibe across all my friends who support Chelsea, West Ham, Arsenal. It's like that this fat fraud from Australia, that's all you could get. He's even worse than Nuno's going to be. You've lost Harry Kane. You are all absolutely screwed in this game. Man United are now showing you up. I was like, what are you talking about? They had their chances in the first half and they could have easily been, I think it could have gone the way I predicted it before. It could have easily and probably should have been 1-0 to them at half time, but I'm confident we'd have come back and walloped them with another 3 goals in the second half based on the way we performed.
Would have been at least 1-0 if we had Raya.
Yes, true. Well, that as well, it suddenly made me think maybe this Vicario guy has a higher ceiling, because Raya is a really good goalkeeper at his peak. Vicario is a decent goalkeeper with a huge ceiling, you think. So, yeah.
This is where I take my victory lap. What have I been saying, guys?
I know you were very, as you followed that Serie A, you were quite complimentary of him. So,
But I just think, yesterday's performance really should underline, although I'm sure it's not going to make any point with many of our fan base, but our fan base always gets so upset about buying punts from farmers leagues that if we don't spend 70, 80 million, they're obviously crap players. How much did Doji cost? Where did he come from? How much did Vicario cost? How much did Bentancur cost? How much, okay, even Kulo, so 25, 30 million in the end. We're not spending a lot of money. As long as the players have the right attributes and fit what the manager's looking for, let's stop worrying about, the fee and which league they played in and the rest of it.
Oh,
So
exactly.
I think you're saying keep buying from Italy.
Well, it's like, can anyone pronounce what the Croatian league is called? Does anyone know what it's
Nope.
called? Well, that's where we got
I
the
have no
best generational possibly the best midfielder of a generation in Luka Modric from.
Yeah.
We got a midfielder there that Real Madrid went on to build a whole team around for a decade and win 5 Champions Leagues with. Like, that came from a league outside the top 8 leagues. Like, it's just to say that a player can't be good because of where they came from like that is just ridiculous. Gareth Bale was Southampton in the Championship when we signed him from there. I could go on for a long time.
Yeah.
Vertonghen was from the Eredivisie.
Yeah.
Like, so come on. Actually, our worst signings have been the proven players from La Liga or the Premier League for a bigger fee. The best players have been the ones that were, the non-obvious choices that City, Man United and Chelsea haven't already mopped up because they can offer them bigger wages than us. So it's...
Also, coming a little bit closer to home, how much did Madison cost? How much did Mount cost? And who was the better player yesterday?
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
I have no idea why you would spend the amount of money that...
Oh, and look at the one proven Premier League player we signed for £60 million. That's probably the most criticised in our team, in Richarlison now.
Yeah.
It just goes to show.
How much is Basuma worth in these
20,
today's money?
He only cost
Now,
25 million.
25 for him. If he has a season and he plays like he has done for the first 2 games, that's 100 million player there.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were run the way that some people think we were, we'd sell him to Liverpool now for 100 million quid, or we would have sold him to them. It's just amazing that some of the business we've actually done. It just goes to show how important the coach is over everything else. So
Exactly.
But we weren't perfect, were we, guys? But there are some definite areas of improvement. There were obviously those 2 glaring headers. One was offside, one was onside. There was a penalty that, I think both sides should have had a penalty if you follow the rule book. Should we start with those? What did you guys make of the Romero handball and also the foul on? Was it on Romero as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was on Romero.
Yeah, they both
Romero
of course they both involved
loves
Romero.
penalty. Romero loves a bit of controversy. I think the problem with the handball one, because I think that's the one that people have been more up in arms about, is that by the letter of the law, like the argument is whether or not if I understand the rules correctly, and if they actually like choose to put what's in the rule book correctly, the argument is whether or not his hand is in an unnatural position, which I don't think you can argue that it isn't, because like he's going to slide, you bring your arm back. Anyone who's been on the pitch for more than 5 seconds, who's tried to put in a clattering tackle on anyone, knows that that's where the hand goes when you're going to slide. Also, the second thing is whether or not he's like the ball's like far enough for him to react to put his hand there. I don't think he was far enough there either. So I think that in that case, you go with whatever's called on the field, which was obviously not a penalty. I think if they had called a penalty on the field, they would not have overturned it. But it is nowhere near as clear-cut of a penalty as Wolves should have had last week. So the audacity of United to go crying to everyone that they know is incredible, but not unexpected.
It's just because of this context, isn't there? Against Wolves, they know they got incredibly lucky, and now they're having that accusation of Man United always get decisions in the media. So they're desperately, the fans trying to bat away that narrative by saying, look, a decision
Not
went
just the
against us.
fans.
Yeah, it's the media.
Players
Yeah,
and the coach
players.
too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I
And we'll
think
get to those.
I think the judgment of whether that was a penalty or not would we be shouting for it, and we would have been all day long screaming for that to be a penalty if it was
That's
bad.
true.
Yeah.
So
But
I think we got out of jail a little bit there. We got away with it. I think, DJ, to your point, I think what saved him was the arm was slightly out, but it was at such short a distance. That's what I think saved him in terms of the on-field decision. So
the official
This is-
rule change the official what's the word I'm looking for, explanation, is that it wasn't counted because of proximity, which is a new thing apparently that's been introduced this year, which apparently many people,
The
pundits,
Sissoko
players, and
rule.
coaches don't even know about.
this is so
interesting.
But yeah, so the proximity issue is what saved us.
That is
Which makes
interesting.
sense. I mean, you got to have some common sense. But I think, going to Sai's point, we'd all be shouting for it because nobody knows what the rules are anymore. It's changing every season, and that's, I think, creating half the issues, on the field as well as with the pundits.
Even when you hear Howard Webb interviewed about the handball, even he said it's the most complicated rule in the rule book.
Of course it is,
Really, I mean, he's advocating for going back to referees using some common sense rather than trying to narrow it down to the tightest of rules because it's such a complicated rule. It's too difficult to be black and white on.
The two reasons why football will never, ever have an easy rule book to follow is that there's two things in there. One is, was something deliberate? You can never know for sure if something was deliberate. You're just guessing subjectively based on someone's expression and where a body part was. And you're never going to be right all the time. And the other part is the rule book various rules mentions natural body position. Now, is it natural when you're jumping, standing? Is it natural when you're sliding in? Is it natural when you're in what? Like, it's just so subjective that
what is
you're
unnatural
only going to get
anyway? You know what I mean? What have I got my arm up my arse or something? That's quite unnatural.
Yeah,
but
exactly. And that was it.
Depends what room you're in.
Would you remember when they changed it? Yeah. Do you remember when they changed the rule to if your hands basically, if it touched your hand in the box, it's a penalty.
Yeah.
So all the players start running around like penguins with their arms by their sides. So, well, now they're no longer running around using a natural body position, so that's not natural now. So is that a penalty still? It's so difficult to get right, and we're never going to fully align. But I think 6 times out of 10 that's given. Personally,
I thought it would have been, especially being United. I was sure they were going to give it.
Yeah.
And the second one, our one, if Sonny's one last week was a penalty, then what the fuck is that?
If it was anyone who wasn't a defender, that's a penalty. That's my opinion. I think it's because it was Christian Romero. They just decided that it wasn't a penalty for whatever reason. If that's Sarr, if that's Madison, if that's Son, if that's Kulusevski, if that's Richarlison, maybe not Richarlison, but if it's anyone else, that's an easy penalty.
Nailed on, mate. And I think there's 2 fouls there. I think there's a foul where he clips his foot, and then there's a foul when he barges him over.
Yeah. Well,
we should have had 2 penalties.
But again, it's the problem is the lack of consistency because the same league, the Fulham against what they played, Brentford, exactly the same thing happened, and they gave a penalty. And a second yellow card. I mean, on the same day. I mean, come on, guys. Figure out what you want to do.
It's a classic thing of they always try to rebalance their decisions. So I think because they gave Man United that didn't get that penalty against Man United last week, they were harsher on them today. And then same with us, because Son was harshly giving away a penalty last time, they decided to be a bit more lenient this time. It's who's eating crisps?
I'm just stealing the shit off my Wario.
I see.
Brekkie.
No free promo.
By Prime today. So there was some other positions I wanted to talk about because our front 3 players, for me the biggest concern is that Son still looks a shadow of the person he was 18 months ago.
I thought Son played really well today.
Yesterday. Better, but I wouldn't say I'm confident he's going to score anywhere near the golden boot like he was at his prime. Kulusevski, his pace for me is the concerning thing. Like how many times he gets the ball high up the pitch and they just catch up on him. He slows down and then just passes it, and it's just
switches onto his other foot.
Switch on his other foot, and
That's what I was going to say.
Richarlison grew into the game definitely in the second half. He was much better than the first, but he's still not looking like a player we're going to get 10, 15 goals at the moment. But do you guys think that that's just it's a matter of time until some of these or all of these guys click into action? Or what's your thoughts?
I mean, we played one of the largest historical clubs in England and one of the best low block teams in England in the first 2 weeks. I'm not super surprised that our front three isn't necessarily firing yet. So I think that our run of games after this is a bit easier, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that those will be good to get Richarlison, Son, Kulusevski on form. I think that it's so funny watching Kulusevski dribble down the right because you can tell with every fiber of his body he just wants to cut inside at all times. He just wants to. He is fighting every natural instinct to just go back in. I thought that Son's play with Udogie looked a lot better today than it did against Brentford. He had a couple chances where he either slotted Udogie in, or I think Sarr was the one who almost had the goal in the first half before obviously scoring.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that Son is getting a bit better at creating those chances. Then he also had the one where he dribbled all the way in, and if he brings it across goal instead of trying to shoot near post, that was probably a goal as well. So I think the goal is coming for Son. Richarlison, I think we've just played teams that will shut him down better than most of the other teams in the league. And then I don't know, Kulusevski I think also had a better kind of grew into the game. He actually just had a quote that said he no longer has to play wing back, so he's learning a lot of new things. So I wonder what that means.
I think, I agree with DJ. I think the three of them need to build up a little bit of chemistry. They've not played before, the front three before. Even in the friendlies in preseason, Kulu and Son were playing with Kane, and Richie was playing with Perisic and Solomon. So even there, they're learning as they go now. And I think it was the first half where Richie was free in the middle and Son's cross was, miles over and almost went out for throw in on the other side. So I don't think he's helped by poor supply. But I do agree. It is worrying. He's not able to hold the ball often. Gets shoved off the ball very, very easily. He's always thrown himself to the floor, and I think he needs to be a little stronger.
Yeah, I'd agree with
and
that.
I wonder
That's
as
fair
well,
assessment.
you can only work on so many things in training in the first 4 to 6 weeks that you got the team, and I wonder whether the amount of chances that we're producing. I mean, we've scored 4 goals in 2 games. I'm not sure that goal scoring is going to be the biggest thing that Ange needs to deal with first, because the defence is so new. That's going to need working on. The midfield is coming together nicely. I thought I agree with DJ. I thought Sonny ran that channel really well yesterday. I thought he created, especially second half, I think he created a lot of problems down that left hand side. So I've got him down as did better, ran the channel well. Still not 100% though. I'm still, my jury's still out on Richie at the moment. I'm not even seeing some stuff where I go, oh wow, that was unlucky. Oh, I can see what he's trying to do. I want him to be successful. I think we've got to still keep him in the side, give him a run of games to prove himself. But he's going to have to, in the next 2 or 3 games, start doing some of this stuff. Otherwise, I don't know whether he's going to make it. And the challenge is that any top team, no matter who you are, has an out-and-out goal scorer in it somewhere, right?
Well, this is where I did a bit of analysis on this, actually. So I was thinking, can teams historically succeed and move forward when they lose key strikers? And the 2 teams that stood out last season that outscored us but didn't have a player score more than 12 goals in their team, where their striker didn't score more than 12 goals, was Gabriel Jesus for Arsenal. Their number 9 scored 12 goals. So they consistently seem to pepper in low double digits across Saka, Martinelli and Odegaard. That's what dragged them. And then Jesus did the same. And then the midfielders tapped in 5 each. That's kind of what I'm expecting us to also do. I wouldn't surprise me if Richarlison got 10 to 12 if he finds some form. And Brighton. I think their number 9 scored 10 goals last season. And they were in the top 4. So I think there's... And Man City, obviously, 2 seasons ago, won the league without playing a striker at all. So I think even though it would definitely be a benefit to have a striker, there are certain systems where you just don't build it around your number 9. It's just not. I think that's just a bit of an outdated English philosophy now, is where that number 9 is the focal point, but there aren't many number 9s around, so other teams are just adapting now to how they play. Haaland's probably an exception, but we'd argue City got worse when the goals kind of all started funneling through him, at least initially anyway. They're unbelievable now, but they always are. But yeah, so there is some reason for optimism. But yeah, we definitely need to upgrade that position long term if Richarlison does not show significant improvement.
And there's no backup. I don't know where the pressure for positions coming from. I don't know where the pressure for replacing the team's coming from for Richarlison as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think that I'm still confident we'll bring someone in after a couple of people go out. I think we'll see a couple of people go out this week, and then we'll see someone brought in.
Yeah, I agree. It's one in, one out. Ange has been very clear about that in this press conference now. He said the squad's too big. I don't want anyone else until someone leaves. Whether that's his actual view or not, who knows? But it's a mature answer, and I think that's what we'll definitely see follow. We've got to end in a minute, but there's a couple of there's another stat that's super interesting, and then you guys also want to ask if you want to add anything.
Yeah.
But Ange hasn't lost a home game since he managed in Japan.
Yep.
I just love that. He hasn't lost a home game in over 2 years. That's just an incredible statistic for me. I think that equals was that 60?
40
No,
something. 40 something
47, isn't it? Yeah.
47 games.
47,
Does that
48.
include cups as well? I think it might
I
include
don't know.
cups
You
as
brought
well.
the stat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's pretty. I think it does include
Zone
cups.
the
It just
stat
says
now.
game.
You can't bring the stat and leave it sitting
It
all on
includes
its own.
every single. He's never even lost a home
unattended.
game in the Champions League. There you go. That's Celtic. So we're going to be fine.
Whose stat is this? Has someone left a stat?
Did anyone else have any observations?
Yeah,
Go on,
I wanted
Stu.
to ask you guys your thoughts on Mickey van de Ven, because I read a lot of comments online where he was getting like 2.5s and really slated and really really poor, and I thought in the first half he did get caught out a couple of times, but he recovered and resolved the issue. So I was thinking, and the second half he was fine. So I was thinking, okay, maybe it wasn't as good as week 1, but I didn't think it deserved the OTT kind of response.
No, not at all.
I agree. And his
When
pace
you're
saved
tasked-
us a few times. Go on.
When you're
Deej.
tasked with trying to keep track of Marcus Rashford and Antony at basically the same time because of how we play our wingbacks, and you give up maybe like a couple decent chances. I think the best one that he gave up was the one that he gave up to Antony, where I still think he did like a decent job blocking the near post. Antony just cut and tried to shoot far post and was, to be fair, a bit unlucky not to score. But that's what 100 million will get you. I think he did a really good job. I think we as a fan base will have to get used to what to expect from a center back who is playing in an Ange system where oftentimes the line is over midfield. Like the thing from the guy from Tifo did, where he was talking about how Tottenham will be fun for everyone to watch, and he showed that picture against Brentford where we were halfway inside the Brentford's half with our back line.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to be defensively perfect. You're going to be running back, and they're going to cut inside, and basic momentum is going to tell you that, especially for a guy of his size, you're not going to be able to turn the most gracefully. But if you can prevent the like big chances to come from that, I don't really see the issue. I thought he played just fine.
Yeah, I thought he did well.
I thought he did decent.
He got caught a little bit out of position a couple of times, but to Dee's point, that's maybe one of the not the flaws of the system, but it's one of the aspects of the system that you're going to have to live with. And I think his positional play will come better. It's the second game. He's going to be finding his feet in the Premier League. I think when him and Romero get that better understanding, and him and Udogie get that better understanding as well, I don't see an issue with the fellow. He's lightning quick as well, so that's going to get him out of some scrapes. I mean, there was a couple of times where he went after Antony, and Antony couldn't get away from him, and that shows the speed of the guy because Antony's no slouch. So I think it's all good. I think we still need some competition for places at the back there. I still think we're light at centre half, and we'll see what happens before the end of the window. I guess we're still in with the sniff of a few.
That's the one position I want more than even a striker. Is I want another centre back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I remember, just to go back to last point on Van de Ven, I just remember the stark difference between Rashford and Van de Ven chasing down a ball, and they were about even for pace because Rashford's obviously no slouch either. But then Son just running past Varane. It was night and day.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. We've said this it's kind of on the topic. We've said this and we've called them out on the preview pod, and we said we were all confidently beat them, and that their transfer policy is crap, because what they've done is they've signed Varane and Casemiro in their 30s and Eriksen, and they've had a great first year, but now because they've hit that magic 31 to 32 years old mark, they're just falling off a cliff physically. And you saw
They never
Casemiro
played Football Manager.
Well, yeah, I just find it so short-sighted that the obvious is happening. Casemiro's legs are falling rapidly and he can't keep pace with the game. Varane's getting skinned by Son, who's lost about 20% of his own pace. So he's in his 30s as well. And Eriksen's not even playing because he's falling off and regressing as well. And then Ten Hag's tactics, this guy's made out to be some messiah. Everything is fixed for Man United, and they all arrogantly went into the season. It's like, really? You just signed Mason Mount for £70 million and you play him in central midfield. Every Chelsea fan would tell you that is the worst place to put him on the pitch. Like, it's just not getting the best out of him. And then to play Rashford up front as a 9 when he is lethal on the left wing. He would have Imagine he does. Imagine putting him on the left wing against Porro that game. I reckon they'd have got a goal or two out of it. They could have, chucked me up front and I'd have had balls going into me from him. So.
I'm still not convinced that 72 million on Højlund is going to be a success.
No, not sure.
Banking on him just because he's Norwegian and looks the same height as Haaland. I don't understand it.
The age thing's quite nice for us now, right? So we're looking at, what's our average age yesterday? 25.
Yeah.
And a couple of 20, like Anne said, a couple of 20-year-olds, a couple of 22-year-olds in there. I mean, that
23s.
That team has got. You used the term ceiling quite a lot, Jim. I think it's got a really high ceiling. That team.
Oh, big time. The only one who's at their peak, I'd say, is Son. I'd say the rest are all players who can prove. Madison's probably nearly there. He's mid-20s. So, but the rest are all just going to.
When you've got
Richarlison as well, obviously.
When you've got your experienced players looking after the youngsters, and they're 26, that tells you something about the age profile of your team, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear? Sorry, I know we run out of time, but did you hear what Ange said about Madison?
West Ham has scored against Chelsea.
Oh.
Sorry, go on.
No, did you hear what Ange said about Madison, about how he's come in and he's not tainted by past failures at Spurs? He's just come in with this attitude of, I'm at a big club and I'm going to do well, and I'm loving that. We've got this young squad now that's as Jim, I think you and I were in the group months ago saying we needed to have a big broom and push out everyone from the old guard, and I think it's really having an effect, and it can only bring good things.
I question some of I think Dyer and Lloris are model pros, so this isn't like a get out my club moment. No. But there's some tendencies I've noticed now, like them turning down other clubs because they want assurances they're going to start. Well, Lloris turned down a club because he wants to start. Dyer being very picky about where he goes as well. That, okay, entitled is harsh, but it does give me an impression that they were really happy with the settled life at Spurs and they're not willing to go anywhere that's kind of, where they've got to go back in and like really fight for a spot or anything like that. And I want players that are like, no, I don't care. I rate myself so highly. I'm taking that guy's spot and I'm going to fight for it. A bit like how Ange is like, I don't care what resources I've got. I'm going to prove you all wrong and I'm going to do it. I know how good I am. You just put me in the seat and I'll do the rest. But yeah, we do need to wrap up, boys, unfortunately. But it has been lovely catching up, basking in a victory. Quickly finish off some predictions for the next game, shall we? Before we finish? Yeah?
This game is...
just Googling it myself. I'm so
Bournemouth.
It's obviously away.
Yeah,
Bournemouth away. Go on, Stu. You're next to me on the screen. What do you think?
I'm going to say it's going to be a comfortable 3-0 win.
Okay. Si?
Yeah, same as I was going to go 3-0, so I'll take that. Yeah.
Deej?
I'll go 4-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1 to Spurs.
Mystic Meg, I hope you're wrong this time.
Like it's the ball out.
We said this before. There's going to be that game will come where we go, right, because at the moment we're living on cloud 9. And as we said at the start of the season, we're probably going to finish logically probably about 6th this year. It's kind of where I think, and then next year we'll aggressively push forward and be in the top 4 and chasing down whoever the top 2 are. But there is going to be a levelling out at some point of these euphoria. Like we said, that Man United game could have easily been another 2-2, which is a big, we're looking a lot better than last year, but we're still a couple of players away from this being the complete system, even though we're definitely going to get 1% better every week, I think. But let's see.
I just think that there's a couple. I guess we'll save it for the preview pod.
Go on. What do you want to say?
I was just going to say I think that I was going to talk about Bournemouth, but I'll save it for later.
What's your reads? Just go on. You can touch on it. Maybe you can change your mind.
I was just going to say I think that just based on the Liverpool game, I think that they've obviously brought in a lot of good talent, but as we see with a lot of teams who bring in a lot of new talent, it takes them a couple of games to kind of get bedded in. So I'm kind of happy we're playing Bournemouth so early in the season because I think both their wingbacks are new. I think some of their up top is either brought in January or our new coach as well. Not everyone can do it like Ange.
Let's see. But there's another thing we need to shout out actually. The THFC Flags are arranging another TIFO for the Chelsea game. I just saw on Twitter. So if you want to get behind that and have a good one, it's all run by fans on donations. Yeah. That's just the same that they all are in all clubs. If you want a club to cover it, it will be the most beige thing ever because it can't offend anybody. But this one, they're talking about doing a big kind of intimidating message that's going to make a statement against Chelsea. Some were even suggesting when Pochettino said this is the greatest club in the world about Tottenham, and like putting by Pochettino to kind of, just to wind them up. But there's loads of ideas going around, so have a look there and put your votes in on what you want it to look like. And lastly, we are 30 subscribers away from 500 on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, which we're quite new to on YouTube, that means we can start making some money on YouTube because we do this all for free and we don't run any adverts to annoy you. So at the bottom left bit, there's a subscribe button and there's also a like button. That genuinely does make a difference if you do that for us. So please do. And if you just listen to our voices on the pod, thanks for listening. And we'll give you another episode to preview Bournemouth soon. Cool. Up the Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.